Hi friends, today we're going to be talking about the very hot topic of if house prices are going to crash. And in this video, I'm going to run through these 7 reasons of why I don't think house prices will crash at all. And I know for some of you watching this, you will be absolutely adamant that this is nonsense and that prices will drop or even crash. And I do 100% get where you're coming from. It seems mad that interest rates can go from 0.1% and increase to 5.25%, an increase of 52.5 times, and prices have somehow on the whole stayed steady, increasing a little, decreasing a little, nothing drastic or dramatic. I also fully appreciate there are regional differences, and relative to inflation, they've certainly dropped. But again, we're not talking about significant crashes here, are we? But the truth is, in a perfect market, house prices should have crashed. That is the logical outcome in a perfect market. So for those of you thinking it, you're not crazy to. There is a huge amount of common sense and logic that supports your point of view. But the reality is the property market is a deeply imperfect market, and these 7 core reasons will hopefully outline this to you. But before we get into it, the reason this is so important to me is because I've spent my life building a UK-wide home buying company, nationwide estate agency, and my own personal property portfolio. So not only does that give me access to information you probably don't have, but getting this right is critical to mine and my clients' success. So please like and subscribe because it helps me out, and let's get into it. Number 1, the vast majority of property owners do not need to sell. At the moment, there are 29 million homes in the UK, and about 500,000 of those are on the market right now. So at the moment, if you're generous, there are no more than 2% of properties on the market at any one time. So in reality, it is actually very difficult for such a small volume of property available to be sold at once that can dilute the overall sentiment and pricing of the entire 100% market. Not unless there is a panic selling event, which there hasn't been. Now, of course, the reason people think high interest rates are going to crash the market is because as they increase, people's mortgage payments go up, and that creates potential forced sales and potentially then panic selling. And that is true, but not 100% true. Right now, about 35% of households have no mortgage at all, according to figures from the Financial Conduct Authority. And last year, 63.4% of new mortgages had a loan-to-value ratio of less than 75%. Around a third had a loan-to-value of between 75 to 90%, while 4.2% were between 90 to 95%. And just 0.2% had a loan-to-value ratio of more than 95%. So this is what I mean about the property market being an imperfect market, because in reality, high interest rates are going to affect these different households entirely differently. Those with no mortgages or low levels of debt have so much equity to spread into that they can sit and wait. Really high interest rates have an adversely high impact on the small number of households with high loan-to-value mortgages, which is causing a small portion of the market to panic sell, but not a big enough portion to dramatically dent the market as a whole. Number 2, 74 to 84% of mortgages are fixed. Like with all this data, there are varying reports of anything between 74 to 84% of mortgages are fixed at the moment, but importantly, a bigger portion of mortgages on 5-year fixed deals. Everything that has been happening in the economy has been, in a way, a slow-moving car crash. And so we've all been taking precautionary measures to protect ourselves in the process by getting into fixed rate deals or delaying the upsize. With such a large portion of properties that are mortgaged being on long-term fixed rates, it again spreads out the effect of an interest rate change. For one household, it may affect them immediately being on a variable rate. For another, it might not affect them for another 3, 4, 5 years. Again, this is what makes the market imperfect. And so the likelihood of huge volumes of homes needing to be sold at the same time is dramatically reduced because of this. And therefore, the chances of a mass sell-off of properties triggering a crash are dramatically lowered. Number 3, the number of mortgages in the UK has dropped. Continuing on the topic of mortgages, there are dramatically less mortgages that exist now than in the first quarter of 2008, where there were more than 15 million mortgages in the UK for a population of 61.5 million people. Now, the number of mortgages has fallen to fewer than 13 million mortgages, a drop of about 13%, even though the population has increased by almost 10%, by over 6 million to about 68 million people. Now, the main reason for the population increase over the period is immigration, which is a later section of this video. But in reality, as a population with 13% less mortgages, our property market is generally less exposed to mortgages as an average, and therefore anything that affects mortgages by default, as an average, a lesser effect on house prices. I appreciate some of you will be watching this thinking mortgage rates are crippling your finances, but the reality is mortgage rates aren't crippling a big enough portion of the market to crash it. For 35% of households, there is no mortgage for it to affect. But look, it is clear that repossessions are nonetheless increasing and likely to keep increasing based on claims, orders, and warrants, all increasing at the moment. But it's important to note all are below pre-COVID levels. There are only about 700 repossessions in the last quarter, which I know seems a lot, but importantly, they are dramatically lower than the last 2 house crashes in the 90s and the 2000 and 2008 crash. Take a look here, repossession rates were consistently in the tens of thousands, over 10 times the level we're seeing now. Clearly, for the reasons that we've talked about so far in this video. But the next 3 sections are what I think have had a dramatic effect to making our property market imperfect and defying economic common sense. But before I continue, please, if you haven't already, at the very least, like this video. It keeps me motivated to keep making them for you. Number 5, immigration. Now, this section isn't about if our immigration policy is right or wrong. It's about how immigration has entirely different impacts on the housing market than if our population grew by the same amount organically. Let me explain what I mean by this. Last year, we had a net immigration figure of 672,000 people. We had about 690,000 births and about 670,000 deaths. So actually, if there was no immigration, our population would have marginally increased. But the key here is those 690,000 births live with their parents till they're adults, in most cases, even beyond. Whereas the majority of immigration is adults that need independent housing immediately. And so that has a far more dramatic instant effect on pressurising housing stocks than if we had 1 million babies born in the UK tomorrow living with their parents. In reality, a bigger potential problem for the future is probably population collapse, as we're getting already dangerously close to there being more deaths than births. That is actually where immigration might actually save us big time in the future, but that's a topic for another video. But for the next section, have in your head that our net population is increasing about 600,000 people a year to compare to the figures in the next section. Section 6, Britain is not building enough homes. Basic economic theory you may be aware of is demand and supply. As demand increases, if supply remains constant, prices rise. The way an efficient competitive market counteracts this is the market reacts by increasing supply to bring down prices again. But unfortunately, supply is being artificially constrained with the property market, which is making the market imperfect. And those constraints are planning and competition. The big problem we have is now 25% of new homes are built by the 3 largest house builders. About half are built by the top 10. So as a property market, we're relying on a small number of companies whose whole incentive is to maximise profits and reduce competition. Essentially, the big home building firms have a bit of a monopoly. There was actually a time house prices fell by 23% in the UK steadily over a 66-year period, which made housing more and more affordable for the nation as a whole. Between 1851 and 1911, there was a doubling of housing stock. It rose from 3.8 million to 8.9 million homes, and this significantly aided pushing down house prices as a multiple of earnings. Over the same period as prices dropping 23%, average earnings rose 90%. It just shows it's possible and has been done in our history as a nation. So in reality, unless we solve the supply issue of property, the demand is likely to always outstrip supply, especially when you take into consideration immigration. But probably the biggest influence to what make the property market imperfect is number 7, government intervention. It's not the best interest of the government or nation as a whole for there to be sharp drops in the property market. So in reality, this alone creates a significant reflex to avoiding the market falling flat on its face. Think about it. The government was concerned over the property market over COVID, and what do? What happened? They intervened with the form of stamp duty holidays. Even now, there is significant intervention in the form of government-backed 95% mortgages, lifetime individual savings accounts, leases, help to buy, shared ownership, all designed to underpin the portions of the market most at risk of impacting the flow of transactions in the property market right now, which is, in reality, first-time buyers. If first-time buyers don't buy, it's then hard for everyone else to move up the ladder and those transactions to take place at the upper levels of the housing ladder. Comment if you disagree or agree, and if you're interested in property or property investing, I'll see you up here.